And we need the language of entrepreneurship as part of what we do. Lastly, it must be a personal commitment. I challenge every one of us. You should think about what is your purpose in life. And what is it that your life is geared toward. I always say the hardest job of a preacher is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant person. That's a hard job. They roll the body down some aisle, some church, families on the front row crying and carrying on. You laying out there in the casket. And we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life you ain't never had. I'm convinced most folks shouldn't even have a funeral. Folks go straight from the morgue to the cemetery. But most folks haven't done anything we can talk about. You should ask yourself every day, if today was my last day, what can they say about me? Just having some material things ain't no legacy to leave. You just get a nice house, your house will be on the market 3 hours after. But can they say you built something? Can they say you stood for something? Can they say you trained and taught somebody? Can they say that the neighborhood and the city is different because of you? Live every day. So when your life is over, it will have had meaning. Rather than you just be somebody else that took up space, collected trinkets that other people are going to enjoy when you're gone. Live for your own legacy. Make your own life have meaning. So somebody can say at the beginning of the 21st century, that generation stood up as generations did before. They formed a new paradigm and they faced the challenges of their time, and you were on the forefront of that change. You took the flag, but you made the breakthrough. And because of that, people will remember this generation as we remember the generations that came before us. Thank you, God.
In the spirit of his mentor, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Let's open up this door and get it ourselves. So on behalf of the Black Contractors Association, I'd like to thank you for coming out to the luncheon today. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow evening at our gala tomorrow evening at the anthology. Again, thanks so much for coming out.
You gonna come back? Hey, we need to get every year. I'm taking pictures, yeah. See, go red. Where's my photographer at? Reggie, can you get a picture of what we, and Sister brought some information that basically addresses some pros and cons. I didn't get enough copies of those. We need to look at what our positions are and how we would use this best to negotiate change. I think before we rush to vote for or against, you know, that somebody's got us in their back pocket, I think what we need to do is use this to continue to negotiate. And definitely on our local chapters, you can do whatever you choose to do. You're still an autonomous organization under the directorship of your board of directors, or if you are the board of directors and your president, you do that. But basically, what it is the discussion of PLAs. Anybody want to give me a take on that?
I got it. We have been pretty strong on this here lately because it has been very effective, and we do have about $1.6 billion worth of work that's about to hit the streets in Louisville. one of the things that I have spoken with a lot of people about, and it was mentioned today, that we are not pro or against unions, that we do have union contractors in our midst also. And it's not something to be for or against the union or for or against union contractors. We work a lot of jobs, 2 gates, and we have a lot of concurrent type of work goes on. We have a lot of non-union companies that hire union companies to do things. It doesn't go the other way around because of the rules there. But we can hire, us as Merit Shop can hire a union company to do something for us. The thing that I stress with our guys, and this has been prior to this, that we will go with what National says. But what I would like to stress with you is that the PLA itself is a white sheet of paper at the beginning of a job. And where we go wrong is allowing the union to give us a boilerplate document that is bad. If you have the wherewithal to take in the time, get early enough into the job to grab that PLA and make that white paper your own, you can make that document yours. Make it work for you. Where we go wrong is allowing the union to give us just boilerplate, give their rules to us and make us abide by them. One of the things that they say that we should not allow to say is that we have to pay into the union. Just because you have to abide by the union rules doesn't mean you have to pay the union your fringes. Those fringes, your people will never get back unless they plan on going union somewhere down the line. So that is one reason why we should never give it to them. All that agreement should say is that we agree to pay scale. That's it. That's all it should ever say. We should never allow it to say more than that. We should have to abide by the same standards as they do. We should have to pay the same standard scale to level the scale, to level the field. But we should never sign a PLA or even support a PLA that in any way obligates us to a higher standard. They mentioned today that $250,000 limit on the jobs that the city can just give away without having to worry about considering. Well, for most of us, I don't know how it is for everybody, but for most of us, if you're a low voltage contractor, you will hit that mark before you ever even hit the job because your equipment is so expensive. You know, we have asked that number be moved to 30 million. That is more fair. If you're a concrete contractor with $100,000 of work, you could easily have $2 million contract because of all the materials that you have to buy and everything else that goes into your contract. So they've just gone surreptitiously around the horn again and found another way to exclude us by manipulating the numbers. Statistics, I wanted to raise my hand and say statistics and damn lies, you know, they're hand in hand. I taught statistics, so I know what you can say with those numbers up there. I just want to cry BS on it. And I'm sure everybody else did.
Well, the unions are not going to change their stripes when it talks about equality. I think in fairness, you know, because we are looking at making a national statement or taking a national position on labor unions, and this is the first time for us getting together. It's good business to deal with, and then to look with that. What's your point?
Let me just say, first of all, I wasn't here this morning when you guys all met.
Marvin Dean is the president of the San Joaquin Valley.
Yes, and also we go back a ways, and I won't belabor you all, but I just wanted to say that I'm glad to be a part of this team. Anything I can do to work with each of you, call me anytime, and I want to really commend Hamid for having the vision and putting this on, and this is something can really be great. I think it's going to benefit all of us around the country. So my hat's off to you, brother. I remember when this brother, I got to say this before we move on, is that it was the land was donated as a service station here. Then they got the $1 million. It was his dream to do this. And that goes with Al was saying. This is so timely. I mean, God is in this thing. For him to go to see all of this, to come from just having the desire to do it with nothing, to be sitting here now, I'm telling you, that is a miracle. And it's really a testament that if you really desire to do something, and we've never had anything as a people, we come out of slavery. Just have the desire to do something, there's no stopping us. Then if we come together, and we come together as honorable people, with God in the midst of us. And like he's talking about, there's a movement that's taking place not only in this country, around the world, and we have a role to play on the world stage.
with.
So I see a lot of things good coming from this, and I just really wanted to say I feel so proud to be a part of this, and so
brother,
proud
let me
of
tell you something, man. This brother, didn't that brother do a hell of a job?
Well,
They all let's give him a hand. Oh man, we were sitting here running 30 minutes late. The brother had the meeting going 30 minutes, you know, just like clockwork. And that wasn't planned. We didn't have a facilitator. He just jumped in there and grabbed. And that's what I like about Brother Marvin.
Well, we're supposed to cover each other.
That's right, we do that. So what's your take on
Well, let me
PLA?
just say this to you, because I don't deal with that much of it here in Bakersfield and San Joaquin Valley. I'm going to go with the wishes of the board, and I think the national board ought to make a statement, but I think it also ought to have the flexibility that the local chapters do have the autonomy to, if they want to negotiate something on an equitable share basis in their own neighborhood, they can do that. And then my whole thing about PL, just knowing what little bit I know about it, is the two downfalls I see in it, because I'm out of the union. Matter of fact, I got a union ticket in my pocket. I was been in the union since 1969. And I'm an IBEW lineman. I work for PG&E Utility Company. Got my first contract with PG&E in 2005. It was a 3-month contract, $600,000. I generated about $300,000 profit.
Wow.
And what happened was, when I got that first contract, I was probably the only signatory contractor in the state of California doing heavy utility substation power plants. When I got my first contract, and this is what happens when it came time for me to get men out of the hall. The white the white workers wouldn't work for me. I got my first contract, and I had to hire, and I'm signatory to this labor union, my own local IBW, which I came from. But these guys up until that time knew me as a worker, as a member of the trade and the tools, and then the contractors I worked for, they just know me as a guy that raised hell, because I made sure I got respect on my job. I wasn't one of these kind of guys that didn't let mine be known if I wasn't being treated fairly. So when they first see me come in the scene to get a contract with PG&E, they looked at me as somebody that shouldn't even be there. So then when I got the contract to have forms, when it got time for the men to be placed on my job, they wouldn't send people to work for me. So I had to get guys from another union, which is wiremen, because in the substation is composite crews. Then I had to bring some of my own workers that normally work on my private jobs. And do you know, when I finished the project, I was getting ready to start my contract on the next project, the union then filed a grievance on me. And what they wanted me to do, the grievance was that they wanted me to pay them $80,000 for fringe and benefits of the workers they didn't provide me, but they wanted me to pay fringes to everybody that was on that job. So we went in, my attorney looked at this up, and at that time I had a double-breast company. Some of you know that means a union shop and one was a signature. So my attorney took the position I wasn't signed, and that I didn't owe the pension fund. So when I go to the labor management meeting, there's typically 3 members from the union and 3 members from the contractors. Well, the 3 members of the union didn't want me in there getting this kind of work, and the 3 contractors didn't want me to do it because they know me from being in the trades. So they ruled that I didn't have to pay the pension fund, and I thought that I won. But then what they did, they got together and said, well, we're going to show you that really what you're up against. Now, I'm going a long story with this, but then I'm going to make a position. So then what they did was they went to the power company, PG&E, and my trade utility company, they require you to be signatory with the union in order to get that work. You can't just go in a non-union contractor cannot bid on utility type work in this state. You have to be signatory to 1245. So what they did, they went and told PG&E that I'm not signatory to them. That meant that union, I couldn't get any more for the contracts with PG&E. And PG&E took a position that I'm not getting involved, that's between you and the union. So it took me 5 years and about $100,000 of my money to file a federal lawsuit against the union to get them to sign an agreement. They refused to sign an agreement with me. I'm a member of this union, still a member, and most time a union want to sign a non-union shop. So I had to force them in order to agree to sign me so that I can get additional work. And that's how they shut me down. And it took 5 years and like I say about $100,000 before we reached across the table and settled the matter. So now I say all this to say about PLAs. The biggest problem I see with it is that, one is that most of the time you have to be signatory to a subcontractor or a contractor working on these projects. So if you're working with a large prime contractor, and most of us may be subcontracted, then you have to go in there and sign labor agreements with those unions. And what happens is typically what the unions are going to want to do is buying all your work. And if I go around this table, and I would say eventually most of the people in here is doing private sector work or commercial, which is not union scale work. So that means if you sign in a labor agreement with these guys and it's not a project agreement, Pacific project agreement, then you're not going to be able to come out here in the private sector and compete because you can't pay the wages. So at the very least, you have to negotiate a project-specific agreement that will allow you to go back in the private sector and do your normal work without paying union scale. But they won't offer you that if you don't know how to negotiate that. Then the second thing you're going to be up against is because when you come in, all of your workforce is now going to be in the union. So a lot of your guys now, when they get a taste of the union and wages and benefits and all those things, you're going to lose a lot of your workforce because they're going to stay in the union. They're not going to come back and work for you.
So they're going to organize them.
So what's going to happen with all your workforce? You're going to have to restart again. So that's another issue you need to be concerned about. Then the next thing what happens is when you go out and you sign your next contract with the union, they're going to tell you that if you don't already have a workforce, they're going to have to dispatch all the men to you. Then we go into like how Ned was saying, who controls those labor unions? We don't have a lot of African American in these trade unions. So my two things that you must do, I would think, if you're going to do it, you need to negotiate the labor force to make sure that there's a balanced workforce of the apprenticeship program to get blacks into these trade unions, because typically they're not going to let them in there unless you negotiate that. And then the other one is you're going to have to negotiate to be able to come back in the private sector and be able to do your work with the regular way you do your jobs. And so I don't really have a position, but I will take a position at the national organization. And let me just say this. What's unique about Hamed and what you're doing here, he's the only one I know in the country that has a state-approved indentured apprenticeship program. So that puts the people up here in a little bit. You have more of an advantage here than a lot of other communities, because he has the ability to give you a state-approved apprenticeship to the trades that he deals with. So you have a lot of flexibility here, and I don't know how well you're going to broaden that in terms of bringing it maybe.
Well, it would be done under BAT, Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training, which is the federal program, and we can get those established in across the country, as opposed to Shelley Montoya, which is state here in state.
Reason I'm saying that, if that happens, then that gives us a lot more flexibility. And then, like you talking about paying the pension fund, pay the funds right in there.
Just because of pension fund.
Right. Pay them right here.
Yeah, we got to help them welfare.
So therefore, so that's why I say, just to help what you're doing here, I can see the benefit why, because it would, if we do these PL agreements, it may put him and his organization and what you're doing at a disadvantage. Because that way, because you're now opening it up to the regular unions that's outside of what you're doing here. So that's why I say is to support what you're doing, because you know it better than I do what you're hearing. So I don't have a problem if we take a statement to be a based on it will help what you're doing here to take out. All I need to know which way you want to vote. Now, you got my vote. And then, but still have the flexibility when we go into our own communities, if we need to negotiate something with our trade unions in order to take in these other concerns, because we may not have the ability to tap into your workforce, then we have that flexibility. That's all I'm getting at. Well, but then this is the last thing, and because I am pro construction trade skill apprenticeship programs. Because it takes these youngsters, I don't care whether you're an ex-con, ex-gang member, all you got to do is make sure you show up on the job, keep your mouth closed, and learn the trade. We teach them this thing. They can learn a good trade. You can't never take that trade from you. So you have the ability to go out and market and earn a decent living. And then there's benefits and all that other stuff. So there's some good sides of being in the union, okay? So I'm not trying to say that I'm all anti-union. So there's some benefit, but I know as black contractors and the workforce, there's some downsides in there. But maybe if we organize, that gives us the ability to negotiate from strength to go in and get these things open up. Like you were saying, I wouldn't sign no blanket agreement, not knowing that all these other things that you're going to take in place, because you're going to kill yourself. So that's where I'm at. So whatever way you want to go, brother, you got my vote. Just tell me what you need here.
I think the main thing is just to get the sentiment out of the group, and then we'll talk about. I will give a perspective in terms of what I see as a pro and a con, and how it will hurt. It may help a brother in California, but hurt a brother in Mississippi. You know, so what may be the cure for you may be the cause for me. And so we really want to be upfront about that, brother Majid. Brother, organization may not be a member. You know, you want to make sure that when he goes and opens that door, it's not locked up. It doesn't say discrimination, keep out. Of course. So, your opinion, my guy.
In that respect, I don't know how. I don't know the process in terms of the mandated situation where you have to utilize this PLA, but whether it be the PLA or whether it be anything else. Nothing precludes us from drafting our own document, producing our own tool for us to use I think it becomes equally as valid as anything else with the right kind of support. And I think that we do have that unique position to be in the middle where folks are fighting for our support. And so my suggestion in my position would be that whatever it is we do, that we don't have to go play on this team by their rules or on this team by their rules, that we're free agents. And so my suggestion is that we craft what it is that we think would be a benefit, as you all stated, to us. And so those that are willing to meet us on our terms, then we deal with folks, negotiate with them at that point. But we don't need to negotiate and deal with anybody strictly on their terms. I understand there's got to be some give and take in whatever negotiation that you do. But I think that the BCA has the right and responsibility to speak his own special truth and to define those things which are defined either by the unions or by the PLAs. There's information, there's language that can be used that we can put out there that's missing. And I think that that knowledge, that information has got to come from us, and we can craft a parallel tool. We can craft a companion tool that's got to accompany everything else that we do.
That's right.
Can I ask a question? Do I hear you saying conceptually you support the idea of a PLA, and in practice you don't? And my second question is, because I'm fairly new to what's going on out here, what is the white counterparts' problem, or what is their issue in this? I read something that Brother Hamid put out, and I think the sense I picked up was, and from what was said today, is that some of them have a problem with it too. And I'd like to know specifically, what are they saying their problem is?
Well, I can answer part of that, and I don't even know all about piano, but you have a lot of white contractors that just are anti-union, do not want to be bound by these labor agreements, like ABC and some of these others. So if this happens, it's going to also affect them as well. It's going to cut, that means that they're going to be cut out, and they're going to have to bound their people to these same, and I just call it like the regular unions versus the, what are you guys, merit shop unions?
No, there's merit shops and there's
what do you call it?
Open shop or merit shops.
Okay.
No, here's the point on that. To answer Sister Cox's question about why are the white contractors all of a sudden crying for a level playing field? Why are they crying for equality? California is the first state in the union to have merit shop, open shop, apprenticeship programs. And you're right, Mark.
Do everybody understand what he's talking about? Not maybe you ought to give a definition.
No, merit shop is basically a non-union. And a union shop is a closed shop, it's a union.
Right.
So when we talk about California having a merit shop program, the BCA's program is non-union because the unions had left the inner city, they were nepotized, they were discriminatory, and Doug Oden, then and now, the president of the NAACP, who's just come back full circle, assisted us along with the Urban League and Judge Trapp, who was then an attorney, and we petitioned the state to get a apprenticeship program accredited. And the apprenticeship program, as I shared with the brothers earlier, it came here by way of Europe. But the point is that why are the contractors so interested in this issue? What they're concerned with is that they don't want their workers organized. They have used these bannering campaigns to go out and say shame on Simpra, or Simpra doesn't support labor. And they're doing that to force the companies to get rid of these open shop contractors who allegedly aren't paying health and welfare and benefits. But with prevailing wages, everybody gets paid the same thing. So it is a level playing field. What you want to negotiate, if anything, like with the Gaylord Entertainment Corporation, they say that we will go with prevailing wages. Because if it goes prevailing wages, then the unions and the open shops are on a level playing field. Right. Because now they can compete equitably and fairly with the same base wages. The only difference between John and myself is that it costs me 3% for my overhead, and he has a 10% overhead factor. So he may not be as competitive as me, the mom and pop guy, with a 3% overhead, and he has a 10% overhead factor that goes into his operations. So what they're looking at is they are, the unions are going to the black churches and the black community in California and saying, they got these white racist Associated General Contractors, these white racist ABCs, who are now asking for your help were the ones that supported the Ward Conley initiative. Matter of fact, they're the ones that they're anti-affirmative action and equality. And so the union said that the way we can get around that is put a PLA in place, and we'll bring your guys in through our labor unions and put them on the job for that job. These were the same unions that fought the Black Contractors Association 15 years ago when we went after our own program, right, Doug? And said that they didn't want parallel programs and they didn't want us to have our program. We said we wanted the right to train our own. Brother Majority was a part of that group. So we went and we petitioned them. This became the first African-American state-approved apprenticeship program in the country. I'm slated to be on the CAC, the California State Apprenticeship Board, as one of the commissioners over apprenticeships to balance the scale. What we don't want to, the message that we're not trying to give is that we're not anti-union, we're pro-freedom.
Right.
What we're saying is that here's a person that's been unemployed and underemployed, coming out of the inner city. In order to get one of those jobs, he's got to first pay his initiation dues. Right. Now his parents have already paid the taxes to get that project built and developed. Now he's got to come up with $350 or $200 to join the union. And then here, the other hand is that now there's 200 Latinos in the line ahead of him. And the unions say that first come, first serve.
That's right.
So then you're going to tell me that you're going to discriminate these 200 Latinos ahead of you to put this African American in front of him, so that you have a diverse workforce to meet the mandates of the African American community. So on one hand, you're discriminating, and they're saying, they're hollering foul because how did this black man get ahead of me and I've been on the bench? So with PLAs, and I didn't want to give my opinion until, I didn't want to get too deep into it until I heard everybody's opinion, so I want to just get off of that for a minute, if I will, because I didn't, but I was trying to answer your question. The question is that they know that the AGC receives over $25 million a year in training contributions because of those apprenticeship programs. It means that every man on that job has to pay 40 cents an hour into that apprenticeship training trust. With the BCA being an apprenticeship program, we get 40 cents an hour per contractor. The unions are organizing against us, and they're shutting down some of our open shop contractors who've been sponsoring us, so that's cutting the resources off if we don't get those prevailing wage jobs and use our state approved apprenticeship program. So they're fighting for one thing. They don't really care about, they don't give a damn about the health and welfare being, they're losing that and men are gonna go there. It's not really that issue. They want that, they want the 40 cents an hour going into those training trusts. And then they're afraid that the unions are gonna organize their workers and then they're gonna lose their workers or make them become union. The next piece is the unions want that $300 and something a month. I mean, $300 and something initiation dues. And then they want to turn around and they want to get that monthly membership so they can fatten their coffers. Now, as I told you earlier, the Democratic Party is beholden to the labor unions. That's where they raise their money. They raise their money through labor unions. The AGC's money is raised through, the Republicans are raised through the AGCs and the building, the businesses. So owners and managers and business people, leaders, raise money for the Republicans because they want tax cuts and they want those kind of perks that comes with it. You know, they want to do away, suspend Davis-Bacon. So on one hand, the ABC, who's fighting labor against PLAs, wants to suspend Davis-Bacon they want to suspend prevailing wages on public projects. They've done it here in San Diego, Doug. So, in other words, they want cheap labor. They'll pay the benefits, but they want cheap labor. So, it's about making a choice between the fox and the wolf, and that's where we are, Brother McKinney.
Let me just say two things before he gets in there. One is on the prevailing wage for people that don't know this, because some of you may know this, but I think so. We got all the facts on the table. prevailing wages on any public sector projects here in California, if you're doing public sector work, is prevailing wage. Everybody gets paid the same
It's
thing.
nationwide.
And
right.
then the other thing is the union scale is based on prevailing wage. That's why Hamid's talking about that equal footing. And the union scale and prevailing wage is one and the same. So that's why they take it that way, to give an advantage to the union,
Right.
to say to these guys, go union, because you got to pay the workforce the same, so why not use a skilled labor force? They use that to beat up on you. Then the second thing I want to say, that what we need to do is be very proactive in the political process. I think we ought to create a lobbying group, you know, just in name only.
Sure.
So that we're out there, like you said, when these issues are taking place, we're right there.
That would be the next move after we get our foot in on this issue. Then we get somebody else pitching to be the lobbyist. You know, he'll do it on a national level. You know,
is your BCA here a nonprofit?
yes, we are nonprofit
Okay.
501c3. But now that's a point, and I've already got Go
Okay,
ahead.
'cause,
And I've talked to my attorney about that.
We have a C6, we have a C3 and a C6. We use our C6
For lobbying.
For lobbying.
That's what we would
So,
do with the national.
All right, I just wanted to
That's good, Mr. Vice President.
just in case
You're on
somebody.
point. Yes, that's on point.
Sure.
I've had that discussion.
Because
I've
they're
had that
quick
discussion.
to grab us on that kind of stuff.
Right. I've had that discussion with our attorney
Okay.
regarding the
Excuse
best
me.
structure.
I may be
No,
on point.
that's a good one.
They'll
brother.
respect us at that point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's the next move, but we want to understand what the issues are and get the opinions, so that when we move forward, we move forward with a group with a consensus, you know, or at least a feel of where we are. Brother McKinney.
Well,
And you are now. This brother comes from a pro-union town, so he better not come back there with his hat in his hand talking about we're gonna do away with union. They got concrete boots that fit here, right there. He's from Chicago.
Well, you know, and that's why I say with us it's going to be just the will of the group,
Right.
Because you know, in Chicago it's union and that's it.
That's
You
right.
know, if you're going to do business in Chicago on any kind of scale, you're going to be union.
Right.
Because the biggest surprise to me was to find out that Turner is doing non-union out here.
That's right. And all of them.
And union in Chicago.
Right.
Right.
And the only way they can do that,
Hey, Paul.
they've got to have these separate companies set up also. And you know, but as a matter of fact, I'm working on a job with Turner now. They're doing probably a $50 million addition to University of Chicago Hospital, and well, actually University of Chicago, and we're working on that project. And that job is strictly a union job.
His fellows is the same way, but out here they're non-union.
Right.
Brady is a union in LA, but they're non-union.
Just say this on the PLAs. The one thing you have to be careful with, you have to watch the language. Because what they'll do with each individual contractor as you sign these things, if you don't look out for the small print, they will have a clause in there that says that if you don't rescind this agreement within a certain amount of time, you're bound by the agreement until the end of that contract, duration of that contract, not your contract with them, but the duration of that union contract. And we had one of our members, a plumbing contractor, get stuck with a $400,000 audit because once the agreement, that particular job was over.
Now, who audited the unions?
Pardon me?
Did the unions audit him?
The union audited because he signed the agreement with the plumbers union. Yeah, each individual contractor, whatever your trade is, you have to sign that agreement with that particular union for that particular project. And then once that project is over, or before that project is over, you have to make sure you send them a letter rescinding that agreement. Because if you don't, when that project is over, you are now strictly union. So if you're, go ahead, you had a
I'm
question?
sorry, I was wondering, did they actually send the union or did they send the state labor and wage people? Because
No.
that's what one of my contractors made that error,
Mhm.
and he was from out of state. Signed that labor agreement, did the work. Then when he went to leave, in came the state to audit his payroll records.
Mhm.
And I wasn't even aware that he had signed that agreement with the union.
Mhm.
And so I gave up all the stuff. He'd go. And the state, well, he's supposed to be doing this, that, and the other. So I was just wondering if that audit, because they are good for calling the dogs on you.
Well, in this case, it was the plumbers union.
Okay.
The plumbers union actually came in and audited his books because he had signed that agreement and hadn't sent them a letter rescinding that agreement.
So he became union.
He became union, and I think they probably waited a couple of years. They didn't do anything. They just let him keep on working.
Smart.
And you know, as a matter of fact, he had a store. And even the guys who worked in the store, you know, they're selling plumbing supplies. Anyone selling some plumbing supplies, whether, you know, someone called up and say, well, you know, I need some, because he was doing a lot of residential work. You know, I need someone to come out and unplug a drain, whatever. All that, they went back and ordered it. And he had to pay union benefits and wages on all that. And that's how he ended up in paying $400,000. So that's one thing to really be careful of.
So the best thing,
The devil's in the detail.
Oh yeah.
one of the things that we always advise our members is that before you sign any contract, have a legal mind
Look it over.
because all too often people get into contract situations thinking, I know they don't read the fine print, and you think you're taking home a palm tree, and you look there and find out you gotta go. See, that's a real problem.
And that's been the problem. Putting that X with it.
And then the union kind of fell through in the 80s. Our biggest problem is the good old boy network. You know, Texas does things the way they want to do it. You know, it's kind of, you know, my uncle, my brother, cousin, and stuff. But I'm going to take the information that I've heard today back to our board and then present it to them and see what they think about it. And we're, you know, y'all have our. And I'm going to say that.
That's the major process that we are faced with in the Carolina area in terms of any jobs or any entity.
No, they're certified as a minority or certified as a pre-qualified contractor?
Pre-qualified contractor.
Right. Well, that's just
We've
got some of that right here in California.
Yeah, and those are some hurdles, and we're gonna, on a national level, we'll be able to deal with that because, you know, since Florence does her homework, you know, and so through the United Black Contractors of Chicago, we have her research and expertise, you know, at hand, and I'm just putting you out there, sister, so, you know,
We get the calls all the time.
yes, so we're gonna do the homework and make sure that, you know, that on the national site, how to get these brothers certified, and if there are barriers, because I got a company like Big Ross that did the masonry here in the ballpark project, he's a major contract, he does $3 million in contracts, one single contract, brick mason, which is a pretty sized project. He did Petco Park. And these certification processes are intrusive, and you know, you're putting a lot of information out there. You don't want people to have your social security number. You don't know who's in that staff that's going to have that proprietary information. So a lot of folks don't get certified because they don't want somebody to know how much money they hadn't made, what their credit looks like, how much they owe their baby mama, you know, and or whatever the case might be. And so they just don't fool with these certification processes. So that's another piece. But on the PLAs, project labor agreements, do you have a strong union hold in the Carolinas?
No, from my knowledge, no, we don't.
And they ever talk to you about PLAs?
They don't, in terms of really not discussing. I'm certain that it is being discussed in the backdoor corners, whereas it's not coming through. I'm certain that it's being discussed because of the economic position that it holds.
So they're trying to leverage. Probably it's because it's an organizing.
So it's an organizing.
And they move it.
Gentleman at the table was talking about at the presentation in terms of having that flexibility to not have forced membership. You know, so you say, yeah, you can have an agreement, but I'm not going to take your agreement.
Right.
You need to negotiate that agreement.
Well,
and if you're not willing to negotiate, you say take it or leave it, then we'll leave it. But if you're willing to negotiate portions of that agreement that you get what you want, you get it from both ends.
Right.
Not only, you know, you can get the Republicans and Democrats say, look, yeah, you can have your agreement, but if it contains the clauses that protect us. If it doesn't, we don't want it. I mean, that way you can still.
Well, you know, and I think that you know, attorney is right on point, because one of the things that you want to do, you use the national's position to leverage your deal. What we've done is we've used the national NAACP's letter to support us, quasi and fume, saying that we do not support discriminatory PLA practices, put in front of the politicians. And they say, oh, the national NAACP don't support PLAs. But in the meantime, if you're negotiating in your local chapter that it's going to be a beneficial PLA, because this PLA is basically, and this doesn't leave the room, because I'm totally against PLAs because of our life expectancy as a national, as a state approved apprenticeship program. Now, I will say that I have given the unions a way out, and the way out is what they did allegedly on the ballpark project, where they were going to have a Hubie clause, a threshold to allow and I think that's what you were talking about, Sis Karen, plants and your Sis Cox and your that piece, the pros and cons. They were going to allow a threshold of small contractors to participate. Let's grant it, most of our members are mom and pop. I think Reverend Sharptown put it right on the point. We haven't had bankable relationships. There's a little boy network there. The contractors who do arrive and have arrived, they don't have a problem with being unionized. Or, you know, if they want to stay open shop, then they're capacitized enough where they're not really in this fight. But the point is that if the national takes a position as a no against PLAs, then it's something that you have in your hip pocket in your local city. Now, if you basically are organizing your contractors and you're going to become all union, which is fine, then if we were to have a PLA, then a PLA would help Paul Jackson, his brother right here, who's the specialty contractor of the year. When you guys go in those bathrooms and things, all those toilet tissue holders and things like that, that brother did that. He did that here, you know, and at Lincoln High School, and just finished the Balboa place. He's capacitized. He has the capacity to do those kinds of projects and the wherewithal. But for Paul, what that means for Paul Jackson is that if the community college district that we pay taxes to support pushed the PLA, then he would be left out of the loop unless he wanted to allow, unless he chose to be union just for those jobs or for that district. One of the things that Brother John Hilliard pointed out, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's done his homework to be a young organization, you know, he has a wealth of knowledge. The oddity that the unions have is when you sign that deal with the unions, you're opening up your books. You have an open book policy. They can come in and look and check and see whatever you've done, and like Brother McKinney it's mentioned, they can go back and make you pay union scale on somebody you sent over to do work at your mama's house. You know, and there's nothing. So if you're gonna go union, you better be union all the way. You know, and so the point is that, and they do use these government Department of Labor. They use green melon in this case with Gaylord. Now Gaylord wants to cut a deal, and I think today you've impressed Gaylord because they're coming to a town near you. They're down in Tennessee right now, and what we want to be able to do is go in with you when they're coming to your community and negotiate your set-aside program. Well, what is the percentage of participation that you want, and how do you get a $300,000 consultant contract for a year for 5 years out during the duration of the project, so that your CEOs and your CL staff basically can do this. There's no magic to this, brothers and sisters. What we've done here is been able to go in and get those consultant contracts and improve the numbers of participation. The reason why we give these Judas Awards out off the record to some of these contractors is to make the others jealous and say, I want one too. And how do I get a trophy for getting just 2 black contractors on the job? Well, we didn't have none. So is the glass half empty or is it half full? So the point is that with the PLAs, I think one of the things that, in my opinion, it's and Karen Price mentioned it, it's a complex piece of document. But we just can't let the white contractors off the hook by saying we're going to stand with you with nothing alongside of you. And Al gave us a speech already. So if we go back and we say, you know, we're against PLAs, and they say, yeah, good, that a boy, then what are they offering? Right. So I think Brother Majani's thing is like, hold our hand for a minute. Let's hold our trump card out. And I'm not a card player.
Exactly.
You know, let's hold the trump card But let's get a lot of noise going in the media that the National Black Contractors Association is meeting on the question of PLAs. Let's get the buzz going, so that in the meantime, y'all can get what you need in your prospective communities. If you need a mentoring program, you need the contractors who has made their money off the backs of the taxpayers. You know, to put a $100,000 endowment or trust in your organization for training. Let's see what they're going to bring to the table. You know, let's negotiate a little something. You know, if the unions say that, well, we'll go with the PLA, then we're part of the PLA. What these unions offered us here in San Diego with the Community College District, because they hired me out to do their community outreach, and they sat on the advisory board. What they offered is to be signature to the PLA. So we would be one of the signature agencies, non-union, the only non-union agency signing with the PLA, saying that we support the PLA, and anything under $25 million, which we were asking for, and they said that was too high, would not be subject to the PLA. Now that sounds fair to me, but what that would do is it would close the door on us with the contractors like the Barnarts and others that are not.
It also,
it's like we sold out.
It would also take away the motivation of smaller contractors trying to grow to get larger contracts, because it would effectively put into place that invisible ceiling. And so what's my motivation? I want to get a $26 million contract, or 27. I worked this hard to get to this particular level, and now all of a sudden I'm pretty much stuck here.
You gotta become union.
Absolutely.
And then there's nothing there. See, I don't want us to get confused over the fact that, you know, Stan Robinson, who's not here, is a union contractor in sheet metal, and that we have a couple other union contractors, and they abide by those union agreements. Vic Ross is union, so there's nothing wrong with union.
How many is the PLA? Is that a document that was crafted by the union? I mean, not by the.
It's new every job.
Every job. It's project labor. It's tailored to the
specific.
Yes.
No, I understand, but who creates the document?
Unions.
That's what. So the union has created this document to protect.
Is that the way it goes here? Because
the unions are the ones.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. They have the boilerplate.
They have the boilerplate.
But it's because we sit back and wait for them to hand us the document.
So
exactly, you don't get it. You don't.
Exactly.
See, we could. If you know, the thing is, I think Brother Henry said the same thing. I mean, said something. Look, if the unions can put the PLA together, why can't the National Black Contractors put the PLA together?
That's my point. Why do we have to play ball?
And that's Brother McKinney, right?
And Doug is saying the same thing. I mean, everybody's saying the same thing. We don't have to utilize their tool.
Exactly.
We don't have to utilize their tool. The project labor, you can call it a project labor agreement, a workforce labor agreement, whatever you want to call it. If we craft it and it speaks to our interest, who cares what it's called?
I have a copy of the PLAs that we used on the ballpark project, and I'll send it to all of you. You know, from the national side. You could send me the PLA, and what we'll do is we'll send it to our attorneys, and they'll give us an opinion. And any of your attorneys that want to look at it, we need to have a consensus.
Now, what part does the owner play?
The owner basically is negotiating this PLA to say, yeah, we agree with this, and no, we don't agree with it. What the owners have basically said, you know, the unions have said, look, you know, you don't have to sign this PLA, John Morris, on this ballpark. But you know, if the EPA got a copy of this list, you know, of environmental issues, and you're building on an old burn site, you never build nothing on this property. So we have some friends with the EPA. I'm just telling you straight up. You got a ballpark. You got a ballpark project, major ballpark that's going to be built right in your city, and guess how many tax dollars you're going to get? And what is that going to do to your capital fund if you got a ballpark down here, whether you have one rather than not have one? And that's how they use this leverage. They use their akin to extortionist tools to basically say this is how we get a PLA. So when they go to those owners, they've done their homework. Now, what are we going to use as a leveraging tool to say that we want a PLA? You know, we got friends in the EPA. Are we going to use that as are we going to use green mailing? Are we going to use anti-strike? Well, you don't have to worry about us striking on the job. You know, so we have to think about what it is that you bring in. Why would a governmental agency, why would a government or private developer choose our PLA over a union's PLA.
Yeah,
Or choose
that-
our
yeah,
PLA, period.
that's my point.
Unless we're working unless we are in the union document. Now, if we're going to go union, we have to go union all the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Can I share something? Because a lot of the big thing I hear is that the unions are pushing that skilled workforce. They got a skilled workforce that can bring your project in on time and on budget and all that kind of stuff. So that is what they're going to these government agencies and trying to get them to convince them to.
But Marvin,
Yeah.
I want to beg to differ.
But I mean, I'm just saying.
No, I know that's what they're using. And
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm
right,
just saying that's a
But I'm saying I
sell.
beg to differ with the unions.
Right.
Because what you got to realize, we, the African Americans, were the ones that taught Americans work ethics. We had the skilled workforces. You know, we've gotten away from the strong work ethics. The Latinos have adopted that work ethic. You know, and it wasn't so much. We trained thousands of people over the years, but hundreds of people through these apprenticeship programs. We have a state-approved apprenticeship program that basically have a standards of training. That standard training is the same standard of training that the union shop use. So if the National Black Contractors Association has an apprenticeship, has a set of standards to train construction workers, safety standards, and everything else that it takes, then your training is no more inferior than theirs.
That's why I'm saying maybe that might be because we were saying what would be the leverage that the National Minority Contractors Association, the Black Contractors Association would need as leverage to get, because you're talking to the owners about signing a PLA agreement. And I kind of think the deal is let's create our own document, or let's tailor the document that will benefit us.
Well, I think
with the training program you have here, it does give you that leverage, because that's the argument they're using is the skilled workforce, and you have one right here.
Well, the reason why we would protect our apprenticeship program, Paul Jackson is a apprenticeship sponsor, and he's got some apprentices that are working on federally funded projects. If that job was to go PLA, Paul could not use our apprentices, nor could he make the training contribution.
Well,
So what you've got to understand, before we jump in bed with the devil, let's understand where we are. You know, I think, and if we stay neutral, before we know it, he's going to be knocking on your door.
Right.
can I back up and ask
Yes,
a question?
sir.
Why would his apprentices become ineligible because you went PLA?
Because it means that they cannot use non-union apprentices for a union contract.
Okay, that goes back to the original question.
Create our own.
If it goes PLA, we ensure that language does not do that anymore.
It protects you and your people.
And the question
And I don't understand, it runs counter to kind of what we're talking about. And this is the kind of the sticking point I get into with my guys. So if they're so adamant about using the unions and the part of the reason that they're so adamant about using the unions is because half the time we don't have companies that have the capacity to do the work that they want to do. Fine, I'll give you that. But don't tell me I can't do anything. And don't use this PLA
Well, you know
to
what,
stop me
and
from getting my
I agree, and I think that what we've written out, we wrote a position to the San Diego Community College District and also to Jerome Horton on the LA Housing Commission's project. And the letter says National Black Contractors Association questions PLAs. And the bottom line says that the National Black Contractors Association do not accept PLAs in their current written form.
There you go.
So
Yes.
we left one out, and we left the question in their current written form. Yes, sir.
And basically, what you're saying is you want to come up with your own template for PLA. Because it sounds like these PLAs are, and I'm just talking to Sheila with the school board and Cliff Graves with the UC system, they're project specific.
Right.
Right? So you, like Brother John was saying, you got to have inclusion, like Doug was saying, especially being the attorney, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to have exactly what you want
Yes, ma'am.
in that template. And it could be a template that's adopted on a national level and adjusted as the need may be. Speaking to another thing in terms of their leverage, if you have an apprentice training program, that takes away the leverage that the white contractors have, because your apprentice is going to be just as skilled and just as trained. So that negotiate and employ.
The
That takes away that leverage that they had,
And you
right?
know, the other benefit of that, you're dealing with high core at-risk youth, ex-gang members, ex-cons,
Right.
inner city youth. So your apprentices will be more,
Pool is ready.
Yeah.
will give you more
Thank you,
edge
though.
because everybody recognizes that's an area that's being underutilized. And the regular unions are not taking those people in there.
That's right. And so the question
So
how you
that way
raised
you
earlier.
can be tailored to that. I think it's an edge.
You raised the question earlier, and you were about to get it out, and I think that you were going to ask the political pressure to do a couple of things. For
You
one,
can turn the lights on so we can shoot.
community development, you want to shame them,
Exactly.
and then you want to have your political support to call into question
Call it a pilot
the
project.
fairness of this. And so, and I think right now is the best time to do it.
You know, and you're right. I'm gonna let Brother John jump in here because I'm gonna tell you something. There is just before you go ahead, Brother John.
All right, the thing that I was going to say to you is part of the reason these PLAs have been so hard to get rid of and to do away with is because politicians
Are being
support
loud.
them. They get behind them, and the reason they get behind them is because the unions want them. Well, if instead of trying to do away with the thing that we need gone, we modified it so that it helps us.
Swim with the tide. Not against
Exactly. Well, it allows our black politicians that are in place to not be against the
Keep that
unions,
support to keep it
but
office.
support us.
Okay.
And I'm just telling you, this is a tactic that I took in Louisville, because if I said no PLA, y'all kiss my ass. Excuse me. If I just say that's just how I'm gonna do it, no, I'm not listening to anybody. Then what I have here is a strong union sentiment against me, and I have my own politicians, my own black councilmen against me who have to run for re-election, who need that union support to get that office.
And everybody's not a George
And at the
who
same
didn't-
time-
who didn't have the unions, didn't have anybody's support, but he had the support of the community.
And at the same time, you get a pat on the back from the white contractors that gives you nothing nowhere.
And get nothing at all out of the deal.
See, and the thing is, we use them also, because with that modified PLA, it allows us to work, it keeps them on the job, and it allows us to tell them, okay, the next time we add you in there with that mix. So that card that we're talking about holding, that lever that we're talking about holding, that's where it is. We have them also.
So the way we craft our own tools and it gives a state-approved document that we can use so that we have our black caucuses sign off on it. Now, think about what Curran said today. Curran was in the middle.
Right.
Curran didn't say one way or the other. You know, he said, I see some good points, I see some bad points. So why not craft our own document? And I don't care about the unions approving it, but if it's something, and if it's palatable to our elected officials and it does speak to our interests, then it protects them because they're not out there against the unions. You understand?
Putting our
They're
people
not-
to work.
Right.
Use that leverage. Use that leverage for
But we craft it, and we get it state approved. Let it go through the houses, and let it get approved. And everybody saves face, but we get what we want out of the deal. We don't just give our vote up for free anymore.
Well, you know, and I think that's probably, and really from the, that's the reason why it's good to have the diverse perspective of opinions. Because as I think and reflect on where Gaylord is, and Ernie and the unions basically say, well, you're in the know. When I mentioned to Tom Lemons yesterday that I understand that they're trying to negotiate with you a PLA that's going to be inclusive of unions. What the Associated General Contractors did, and the ABC has met with the Gaylords and basically says that we'll support a PLA, but it's going to have to be a PLA that says that nobody can be discriminated against bidding this job. That we're going to, but everyone's going to have to pay the prospective prevailing wages, health and welfare benefits, you know, so that union contractors can compete in an environment with the non-union contractors.
Now, on that point, honey, that's key, because we're not just talking about wages now or benefits. So now we have to define what discriminates mean. Discrimination means different to different people.
Sure.
I can do this and that called discrimination, do this over here, it's discrimination all day long. So, as a matter of fact, think about all the companies we're talking about that we fought against for the last 20 years.
Yes, sir.
Nothing they did, they saw as discrimination. So they were abiding by everybody's law. And they were complying with everything because they had they defined discrimination.
Sure.
We define discrimination.
Right.
We define discrimination.
Right.
This is the best time. We have to speak our own special truth and act of self-determination. I don't have to accept what you put on the table.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that gives us the power to get at the table. With a national organization, you can get at the table and be privy to those documents.
And we also have a national voice now.
Sure.
And we utilize the National Action Network. Talk about Al Sharpton's hair, do all you want. But I dare you to tell me one thing he hasn't said that has been truth in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah, he's on point.
And people are listening.
He is the new economic parity advocate. I didn't say civil rights advocate. I didn't say affirmative action advocate.
That's right.
But he is the new economic parity. We gave him some language today.
Yes.
And he was, you know, Sister Jan is on